Stream is up. Recording is up. Let's do this. All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. I'm Rodin, and we're here for Naked Trading in Albion, episode 2. We made it. The pilot survived.
Indeed.
I know, right? And we're here. We're joined by some familiar faces. We'll go ahead and do our intros here. We'll start with actually our first new face here, Fox4.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about your history and the game, Fox4?
So I played a little bit of the beta for Albion. I kind of stopped playing just because it was a beta and I didn't want to invest too much time in it. Before playing Albion, I played Eve. Actually, I still do on and off a little bit, but I've played Eve since 2003, August 22nd, 2003. I know the exact date. And I actually worked on Eve for about 4 years. And I'm trying to get into Albion right now and doing what I kind of did with Eve, which is a bunch of third-party development stuff.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. And we got Jeronica pulled him away from PL Ops. Welcome back, man.
I'm Jeronica. I also came from Eve. I do third-party development stuff as well in Eve, and I'm going to start doing that in Albion.
Awesome. And finally, we have Caleb Ayrania. He's been busy doing the media rounds this morning. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was just finishing off on Whiskey Gaming Show on INN. And yeah, I have also been playing since 2003, since November 2002, but we're not really counting that. So I'm one of those crazy Eve market guys that's been screaming to get Fox4 to save us from the stuff that he's now doing in Albion.
To save you from it?
Yeah, to give us a better solution than the cash scraping.
Shit.
We had to live with that for so long until you guys at CCP developed the API in a proper way.
Yeah, it's
Hopefully
crazy.
the Albion guys get there. And they say they want to, but man, launching a game is no small task, man.
It's been pretty decent launch-wise. I know that many people have been raging about the whole disconnects and overloaded servers and stuff like that. But if you're getting 4 to 5 times the expected player base, I think it's been pretty decent, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I've been through a large number of MMO launches, and I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're handling it pretty well. Of all the problems that I've seen, to me, none of them seem that critical and unsolvable.
And a lot of nice fast patchings with the things that showed up and was an issue. It's been really nice, and I like the way that they've been doing it. I do think that the whole thing with splitting the storage and auction house and actual town just adds a whole other level of clicking and running around, which is a little bit annoying. But if it solves the server issues, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, when your goal is to have a single sharded server, it's just compromises you have to make.
Yeah, you start having a lot of respect for CCP and what they've actually developed when you're seeing how it works in Albion, right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, one thing too, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was kind of browsing through the various Albion medias, and one of the things I didn't know this, but they were actually super active in stopping the gold spammers in chat, and they actually managed to ban like a fair amount on the first few days of launch. I thought it was pretty impressive, and I'm surprised that's not common behavior by now.
Always chasing that RMT stuff.
Yeah. I think they banned like 500 accounts or something. I mean, because you needed to have bought a foundry pack, right, to start. To be in there to spam gold websites.
But it would have been nice if maybe they just spend a few hours sending one of their developers over and talking to people like in the Eve universe about things like RMT and where there would be design flaws that was obviously going to be abused by RMTers, right? So the whole thing with the gold transfer and the guild gold and stuff like that. That's one of those obvious venues or roads to do RMT, right?
Can you sort of elaborate on that? What's going on there?
You know how in Eve when you do RMTing and you do these fake contracts and transfer money by clandestine ways and stuff like that, things like that. The direct trade of gold and the way of putting gold directly into a guild bank and then letting someone else in the guild then withdraw it. That's an obvious road to transfer wealth in the game, and then just using, say, a PayPal or something like that to confirm, right? So it's an obvious way of doing RMT. So that's why it's being closed. But it would have been spotted initially by anyone that's even looked remotely at RMT stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. There's always action in that end, right? The RMT. It's a market that's not going to go away. I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where that wouldn't be a thing, even for especially for free to players, because they do microtransactions.
Yeah, I mean the whole objective, right, is to make it hard enough for the gold sellers that they have to charge just as much as buying gold from Sandbox. And if the gold price from third parties is the same as gold price from Sandbox Interactive.
It's an endless struggle, and of course it's because there is people valuing the game thing, and there will always be someone able to go in there and take advantage and make money on it. And it's just, from what I can see, Sandbox Interactive are doing all the right things. Maybe not to the level of CCP, but then again, they've not had 15 years of experience, right?
True. All right.
Kind of time they'll get it together and kind of get their feet planted.
They've been fixing things very fast. I've been very impressed at the rollout. I must say it's definitely one of the better launches of a new MMO.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that they were willing to manipulate the layout of the large cities to accommodate higher population. Good on them, man.
I mean, and just simply the fact that they were able to do it so quickly, it shows that they're in a fairly good spot to make decisions and changes without fear of just everything going to shit. Cough.
Now they just have to get ready for phase 2, which is when the players start trying to break their game, right?
Yeah, we're getting there already. I mean, that's definitely one of the things I kind of want to hit up too. I think we'll kind of tangentially get there. We start talking about services.
Sure we will, because we're going to be talking about one of the most abusive systems in games like this, in sandbox games, right? The economy.
The people. Well, we'll get started. I think Caleb, was actually coming from you. You were talking about, let me use your quote here, Tech 1 demands are going crazy after T1 demands go crazy after T5. I think there's been a shift in the resource and production scarcity, or the availability of them, or people willing to farm them. Are we seeing kind of that move as we progress?
Well, of course, I'm pretty new to Albion. I've not played the beta. I don't know exactly how everything is connected and put together design-wise, but from what I can tell, the interdependencies in the system is extremely interesting, and especially coming from another sandbox, everything seems to be tied together and related to each other. So what we're seeing right now is this extreme land rush economy where everything is bonkers prices. Everything is going a little bit crazy. Either it's being fire sold extremely cheap and with a huge loss, or it's being hyped up in price to a level that's pretty much crazy and top of a hype cycle. So what you're seeing is definitely nothing to do with where the economy is eventually going to settle. And you can also see that in some of the design things, like what the recycle values back into the system is. So if you are recycling a T2 item or T3 item, how much silver are you getting and how many assets are you getting back? So valuation in all these areas we are definitely so far out left field that it's a little bit scary. I don't like extremely volatile systems when I'm doing trading, so I'm kind of staying out of most of it. I know that that you wrote, and you kind of like the volatility and flipping things back and forth and doing high frequency trading. It's not really my thing, so I'm just leaning back and watching most of it. It's also why I wrote the article about the carrots thing, because I'm definitely sure that you're seeing as the population matures and moves into getting enough money to buy their islands or upgrade their islands and get more farms, so you get the land value, and that will then be utilized to do the tier 1 and tier 2 production initially. And then because everyone is racing to get skill levels, they are kind of neglecting the rest of the ecosystem. And that's also why you are going to see this huge lack of T1 and T2 materials that will then impact the entire economy and the price as the higher tiers starts pulling that needed material, right? So that's where there's a hole, because everyone is running and only doing the tier 5 and tier 4 and tier 5 nodes and running to the zones that have that, and then they're leaving all the other ones behind. So that means that not enough of it is coming in. And the really huge bottleneck that I'm noticing now seems to be tier 3 materials that people tend to run out of.
Based on that and kind of like the simple nature of the mechanics of the game as far as gathering and stuff like that, certain areas being straight up neglected, certain zones just being very, very empty. Do you think that gives an opportunity for high skill and very efficient botters to kind of take over a particular part of the market and maybe kind of go under the radar for a good while until detection?
I think I've already noticed a few of those.
Have you? Wow.
I'm not so worried about botting as most people are. It's a little bit like when people in EVE talk about market bots. Yeah, they might be there, but I don't notice them. They don't seem to have that much of an impact. Of course, they might be siphoning some cream on the top, but I don't think it's a huge impact. And I don't think botting in Albion is going to be a massive problem, at least not on a scale that matters, because the player base is already running so much ahead of any botting. So let's see what happens a month or 2 months down the line. Maybe I'll change my opinion, but for now, I don't think there's a problem with the bot standing there just harvesting 1 or 2 nodes, especially because the nodes do not respawn in the same place. They deplete. It's one of the things that I really like about the game, that it's these biomes that are then randomized, but they have the depletion built into them. So it's just not going to be a problem as far as I can tell.
Man, that fucked me up the first time that I realized that was going on. Not very many games have that, right? And so I remember playing in the beta, and just there was this spot I would go to, and it always had these notes. I was like, this is a great spot. And then I was like, man, I just went back and it was different. I was like, was there a patch? What did I miss?
I think it's so fucking awesome that you cannot predict it. You cannot game it. You cannot plan it. You cannot optimize it. Everything just moves and shifts, and it's such a nice thing to see in the design, because it's not going to suffer from the same issues with extreme creep. It's all going to be based on actual activity and physical game time at the keyboard, which I think is really good.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. I'll piggyback off that comment that you just made there, Caleb. Even though the mechanics is simple, it's designed to be multi-platform, right? But a lot of people are just enjoying just that kind of that simple aspect of the game. It doesn't have to be super complex. It's just genuinely enjoyable. I think it's one of the things too that you mentioned. It forces you to move around. It forces you to actually see more of the map. It forces you to not just play in one zone, right? Or the zone that's basically instanced, right? So it kind of breaks the walls a little better.
And your comment with the bots, right? If you put a bot in an area with a few nodes, and then it stands there and then it grinds those nodes, they're going to disappear, right? The nodes disappear eventually. I'm not entirely sure how they've coded it, but if you consider how many times you can harvest a rare node, I think there's between 5, maybe 10 cycles in an extremely rare node, and then there's like 5 or 10 times that in the unique, and then 5 or 10 times that in an uncommon, the number of times you can harvest it, and there's even the number of times you can harvest a normal node. It also depletes eventually. It takes a lot longer, but you cannot. I can't imagine how you could code a bot to do that. Of course, I'm not a bot coder. It might be possible, but if everything is moving around the map dynamically and based on depletion and based on where players are actually running and depleting stuff, I don't think you can make a proper bot that could be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Oh my God.
It depends what your objective with the bot is. If you're willing to just, like, if you're just chilling in, for example, blue zone, let's just stick with like an easier one, right? Sticking in blue zone, so you're not worried about PvP. Your only real concern is the mobs, and there's enough resources that spawn away from mobs, and you always, where a resource might spawn is static. It's included in the game files. You can look at that. That's why there's maps online that show it perfectly. You don't necessarily know where it is at this given time, but you know where it might spawn. And so having a bot just run between all the potential ones isn't that complicated.
No, but it could risk ending up just harvesting rough stone and plain wood.
No, because the spawn locations are like, this is where a T4 will spawn. This is where a T3 might spawn.
Are there actually nodes that are that static? Yeah, I think you're right. There are a few ones that are always the same location, but many of them change totally.
They might, like, a given location will either spawn a T4 or not spawn anything, at least from what I've seen. Looking at the game files, I might have. Admittedly, I haven't looked since the beta, but when I looked in the beta, it's very static in that sense.
I just like to run around trying to find those 6, 8, 10, 12 nodes within range of your
Within ox range
of your pickup. That's just so amazing when you find one of those, because then you can put on a movie or something like that, and you can just sit there and just gather all day long.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right. So we're seeing kind of a maturing of the gathering and production side. I'll be honest with being a day trader in Caerleon, I've definitely noticed a sustained increase in value of the, especially T2s and T3s. They literally jumped like easily 50% in the last 3 days, easily, and sustaining it. I don't really do too much T4 raw material trading. I think I'm not too familiar with it yet. But at this rate, I'm noticing, at least on the completed products, the pricing of the completed products haven't really matched the cost of the inputs yet. So I'm kind of curious what's going on there.
They're fire sold, right? Basically because people are skilling, so they're selling at below production cost. Again, I think as it settles and people are comfortable with the levels they've reached, they will no longer be called it this stupid and selling at a loss. But it's perfectly valid to sell at a loss if what you're trying to do is to get to the next tier, right? So you're basically just saying this is just waste because I'm skilling on it, right? That's why you're seeing T4 being under production cost in the pricing, and eventually you're going to see a huge influx or oversupply of T4s, especially because they've been chasing it like crazy, and there's not the demand for it to warrant that number of T4 materials. So the huge price hike is going to be on T2s.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I've noticed that, and the mounts, T3 to T4, the margins are super generous. Like, people are giving up mounts, or just like insta selling it. It's crazy, man. Like, I'm turning easily 25% on tier 3 riding horses. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Like, just via buy orders?
Yeah, for between buy and sell, it's easily, like, depending on the time of day, you can catch it between 10 to 20% difference. It's nuts, and people will like pick it up.
Yeah.
Just pick
An
it up.
interesting thing that I've noticed, I don't know how hard that impact is going to be, but when you build things on your islands after tier 4, the needed materials from tier 1 becomes a little bit crazy and like really straining. And I'm pretty sure that people that are in that tier don't mind paying for that asset. So even though they could go out and gather it themselves pretty easily, it's not going to be worth it because opportunity cost wise, it's going to be a waste of their time. So they are going to actually pay for it. So you will see stuff like rough wood and rough stone from tier 1 go crazy in price, I think.
That's a great question here from chat. ARC Unique about the bot. Any opinion on game not having any anti-cheat? I didn't know that was the case. So they don't have any anti-cheat tools. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what he's saying.
I'm curious what brings that up. Like, have they just not talked about it, or have they talked about it and said they don't have any? Because I'm not really. Most game studios won't talk about their anti-cheat solution because it's counterproductive.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. So maybe there is actually anti-cheat tools in there, which is just not very public. All right. So I guess I'm RC Unique. I'm running on the assumption that there is one. It's just not public. All right.
I'm sure they have their security team, and I'm sure there's stuff in the code that can check out things like cheats or anything. It's just that it's not being made public. It's not like what's that thing, the defender thing that's running when you're playing World of Warcraft?
Warden.
Yeah, Warden. It's not like that. But I'm sure they have something similar, and I'm sure that they are checking the logs all the time. So.
And I wonder if the logs will say something this time.
The logs show nothing. Oh, we have to be careful with all the Eve memes.
All right.
We should segue in and do a more detailed presentation of what Fox4 is actually doing and what he used to do in Eve.
Sure. So I guess for some background, what I used to do in Eve when I worked on Eve, actually even before I started working on Eve, when I was a player and not a dev on Eve, I did a lot of third-party development. So I'd make tools and web pages. Most of it was tools for myself to help with the industry. Some I shared when I was in RVB, some things like that. And then when I started working at CCP, I very quickly transitioned over to working on the APIs that CCP offered to third-party devs of EVE Online. So these were things like the ability for you to get information about your character, or they get public information about the server, what's going on with the map, and things like that. One of our biggest breakthroughs or biggest things we did was offer near real-time market data. 5-minute cache is pretty close enough to real time for most people, so we classified it as real time. So that's kind of what I did in EU. I did a lot of third-party development in support of the third-party development community when I was in CCP. Since playing Albion, I've been what's the word I'm looking for? Spoiled. I've been spoiled by what Eve offers in terms of APIs and third-party tools and stuff. And there's a lot of websites cropping up around like, here's the static data that ships with the client. So here's the item stats and the map information. You can see where nodes spawn and things like that. But to me, one of the biggest things that was annoying was I'm out and about in some random zone and I want to know how much an item sells for, because maybe I want to buy it, or maybe I want to sell something I have. I want to know how much it's worth. And you have to go back to a city and open the auction house and no thanks. This was beyond annoying. So I started working on, I started looking to see if I could somehow pull this information out of the client, whether it was through reading the client memory, or maybe this information was cached on disk like what Eve did and what the Eve third-party devs did at the beginning, or maybe I look at the network packets. And I ended up settling on looking at network packets, and this is actually the first time I ever dug like so deep and technical into something, where like I've never looked at network packets before. They exist, and I look at like HTTP requests, but like a UDP game packet, never in my life had I looked at it before. And so this is, I got fairly far into it. I was able to pull out, like if you made a request for market orders, I could pull out the information that was sort of in the response, like here's all the orders and what the items are and what their price is worth and how many there are and actually who's selling it. And I could get buy orders and sell orders, and it was pretty great. One of the big things I was lacking, sorry, backing up, so I would get this information and I was sending it to a website I put up called albion-market.com, and then this website will show all the different, or essentially all the different market orders that it's been getting. There's a couple of limitations with this. One of the big limitations is I don't know where the location of the player is, so I don't know if this is Fort Sterling or some other market somewhere else in the game. Shit, it could be a market in on a guild island. I don't know. So I've started working with a bunch of other guys. I had too many to name. Strange, Null Soldier, Jeronica, Gradius. Fuck, there's a ton of people working on it. And essentially what we're doing is we're trying to better break down the network packets so that we can find, actually we succeeded, we can now monitor a lot more of the network packets. So we can actually look at things like when you change zones, what zone you're going into. So now I know your location, and I can send that along with the updates to the market orders. So now we can track market orders and what zone those market orders are in. But because we put so much more effort into monitoring all of the network packets and being able to break them all down, we actually now have the ability to look at other things, such as the price of gold, such as map information. When you load the map, what are the plots for a city? What are their prices at and whatnot. I'm hoping we can find things like territory information from the black zones and stuff like that. So this thing that I built that was specifically for market information is actually I changed direction on things.
Ending up being everything else, right?
Yeah, so I had called it the Albion Market Client because it goes with the Albion Market website. But I think it's going to end up getting renamed to the Albion Data Client. And we'll have, and it will just take all of this information it gets and it will send it to a central server. And I'm a really big person, I have a really big belief in sharing all of this information and it all being open. So everything I've been doing and that we've been doing, these other people have been working with, is open source on GitHub. But we're going to take all this information that we gather, we're going to send it to a specific server, and then anyone else can subscribe to it. So if you're someone that wants to know about market information, you can subscribe to it and you'll get every market order we get. If you only care about gold, you can get that. If you only care about the map information, you can get that. Or maybe you care about all of it. I don't know. And then that way, my focus and our focus is then on building this client, this distributed client that we get as many people as possible to run. And it just gathers all of this publicly available information in the game and then makes it publicly available to third-party devs. And then I'm not actually doing a market website. Someone else is doing a market website. And someone else is doing all those mapping websites that show you the map. Well, now they can show you this information for the cities and what the plots are and stuff like that. So we're in a phase right now where we're completely re-architecting this client we've built. I'm hoping in the next week, maybe 2 weeks, we can ship that and start doing some really cool websites.
I don't know if you must have noticed that a lot of EVE players have moved on to Albion, and it's kind of funny when you say that you were kind of spoiled playing EVE. You should also remember that there was a time when you were not, right?
Because you're totally right. You're totally right.
Way back, we had to do the same things in EVE. We had to do the market scraping. We had to reverse engineer data out of the client to get things like out-of-game map tools like .lan and all these things. It's just, I know that Jeronica is like, what, third generation, third-party developer in EVE Online, and has made the recent EVE Mogul market tool. And we've had all these things, and it's just become easier and easier. And I think both of you, I would like you to comment on the fact that do you think it's going to be like an extreme benefit for the Albion developer team that all these third-party people and reverse engineers and all that stuff from games like EVE Online is just racing into Albion and just attacking it from all sides?
As far as I'm concerned, it's a double-edged sword. It's awesome because, and I know this both as a player for EVE and a dev for EVE. EVE would not really. Personally, I don't believe EVE would really exist if it wasn't for the third-party tools. They make a substantial difference. And I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be the same thing for Albion, but I'm a firm believer that the third-party tools can and will make a substantial difference to the quality of the game and what we're able to do with the game as players. So that's great that there's all these third-party devs, not just from EVE, but from other games coming along and wanting to build tools. That's awesome. It then, though, however, puts a lot more pressure on the Albion devs to be like, hey, there's these third-party devs that want to do a thing, but they need APIs and they need this access to this information. But they're busy launch, first month after launch, first few months, they're going to be super busy. I'm sure they have a ton of plans they want to do. Like, carving out the time and the resources to dedicate to it is a struggle. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I think.
Well, do you feel that the things that the third-party developers bring are things that the developers from the game kind of want to have, but they don't have the time, so it kind of...
Yeah, and one of the really nice things is the devs have publicly stated multiple times they want to build an API, and actually they have a little bit of an API. It's not really talked about a lot, but it's what powers the character builder on their website. So there is a bit of an API there, and they actually have an open job posting for a back-end developer and the job posting says to develop APIs, publicly available APIs for consumption by their own websites, but also third-party devs. So they clearly want to do it, and to me, that's a very good sign. The other good sign about it is they've gone and publicly said on the forums, like, we're okay with third-party devs looking at network packets. Don't touch, don't. But there's a firm stance there. They're like, you can look, that's fine. Which I know a lot of other games just never comment on. And I mean, it's one thing to support it, and another thing to be like, no, you can't do it. But then the gray area of not saying anything is really frustrating. So for them to come out and say, yeah, you can do it, look, don't touch, to me is wonderful. And it further shows to me that they do want to support third-party devs and they want to build the APIs. It's just a prioritization thing, and they're working on it.
So based on that, guys, we coming from games where, like what Foxhole was saying, it really added to the value of the game having all these tools. What can Albion and its developer, Sandbox Entertainment, do differently in managing those APIs and access that are given, or maybe even in the realms of, can you as a player earn, can you charge other players to use your service, kind of like what other tool makers have done in EVE? Is that okay?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to what they decide to let and not let. One, you can't send money directly to someone, so that removes the ability to charge so much. It hampers that ability. And I have the distinct feeling they'll follow the same kind of lines as most other games, where it's like, you could charge in-game money for access, but not real-world money for access, which to me makes sense. It just, if they don't do that, it's essentially just RMT.
Yeah, definitely in-game money, that's for sure.
They're going to get some sort of baptism by fire when it comes to these things, right? Because I don't know if they have a lot of contingency plans, but as you mentioned, things like real life services and soft RMTing and stuff like that. There's so many things that they're going to have to make decisions on. This thing with looking in data packets and scraping the cache or looking for things, reverse engineering the client and stuff like that. Well, I know that Foxhole must remember that one of the first tools that came out to EVE Online was actually Reverence, right? That deliberately pulled out data from the test server and basically gave all the advantages, and then I'm sitting there watching and seeing that there's an actual Albion test server that I can log into and see the next patch, and then I'm starting to think, are we going to start seeing a reverence version tool for Albion, so we will be picking apart all the new changes and requirements to build, cost, and all that stuff?
I mean, actually, I don't know what I was going to say, so I'm just going to shut up.
Do you think we're going to be seeing something like reverence in Albion soon?
I mean, the tools to do that are already there. The ability to look at like items and their build requirements and all that sort of stuff is already there. The only thing it's missing is someone building a tool that publicly shows it. I know there's already tools that people use to compare the test server to the live server for their own personal, requirements.
Yeah. So is it going to be public soon?
The people I know that are already doing it won't. But the data is already essentially publicly available. It just requires someone making a tool to do it. So I'm sure at some point it'll happen.
And this is where I think it's interesting for me to follow the approach from the developer's point of view, because CCP, as you of course know from the internal side, is that you have been doing things in a way where you put things on the test server, but you change actual details just before launch, right? So you cannot do that and abuse that too hard.
I mean, some people will have some hard lessons on that, I'm sure. They'll see a change, hit the test server, go and buy a bunch of something on the live server. The test server will change and they'll have wasted a bunch of money. And I'll get to chuckle and laugh.
Indeed.
I'm sure there'll be a rage post on the forums, and it just get to laugh at people.
This is where we have to teach people how to do patch speculation. Very, very careful. They might fuck you just before they actually put it live.
Yep.
Do not buy into stuff just because you think you've reverse engineered something that's going to make you rich.
It's true. I mean, something along the lines of tools. This is something personally I don't have a lot of experience with yet in the game, even through the various betas. What's the alt play like in this game? And should that be... Could that potentially be a way to kind of circumvent certain parts of the game and give yourself an unfair advantage over your fellow players, having a bunch of alts doing something?
I've not looked at the alt benefits and balance yet. I noticed that they wrote this thing about multiboxing. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
That they discourage it and basically claim that it's an exploit, right? And that you're not allowed to run around.
Yeah, you're not allowed to run your own 5-man party of you and your alts and go gank people.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just worried about how are they going to enforce that, and what about things like multiboxing raw call equivalent, right? Multiboxing harvesting and gathering. Is that then outside of the realm of allowed too? And
my bigger problem with that is it's not very clearly stated in if you were just to come along to this game and decide to do that, there's nothing that really tells you you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how they're going to enforce it, and again where they're going to draw the line, because
I mean,
is it then allowed to do 50 islands with alts and farm them with I don't know, semi-automation, because I'm pretty sure that you can do that just like you can do similar things in E, right?
I mean, as far as the detection, there's ways around it, but keep in mind that these people are installing an application on your computer, and you're essentially giving it admin rights. So that program can do whatever the fuck it wants. It knows everything about your computer. So there's people that worry oh, well, how will you know if it's a difference between me and 3 of my buddies having a LAN party at my house or me running 4 clients on my computer? Well, their client has access to your computer. It knows if there's other processes running. It knows the composition of your hardware. It generally knows if it's running in a VM. There's ways to understand that as a developer. I mean, again, it's not foolproof. There's ways around it, but Like that, for the most part, that's detectable for most people if they decide to put the effort in. I don't know if they have.
And then there's those legal ones where, what if I'm physically controlling 5 tablets with a 5 versus 5?
It is multi-platform. I mean, it's probably more possible this way, right?
If you could break out 5 tablets and play Albion on them and PvP like manually, all the props to you. If I was the devs, I'd be like, man, you go for it. You do that.
That's similar to what some of the multi-boxers in EVE are doing, right? The way they are doing it, it just looks crazy with their setups and several mouse keyboard interfaces and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the PvP part. Definitely is it's like an obvious thing for multi-boxing. I'm more concerned with like being able to more safely transport goods through black and red zones. That's a really big concern for me. Breaking the scarcity.
How would change that?
Scouts maybe, or what do you think?
There's certain services that can help you with that. That's a really good segue.
I don't. I post the black zones, but that's about it. I spent too much time on this market client, data client thing, so I'll be honest, I don't know enough about that side to know how alts will play into it.
I think one of the things that I'm taking away from playing Albion and seeing how it's being played is that coming from a game like EVE, it feels like you're trying to put your feet in very, very small shoes, right? The maps are too small, the groups are too small, everything just seems extremely small, right? You can have a very small group of players running a biome, and they can basically cover it scouting-wise pretty easily, which means that things like sneaking through or transporting goods and stuff like that. And then you've got the whole gate camping issues. That there's something when it comes to the whole map and the size of the world that rubs me the wrong way. It feels very narrow.
Feels like low sec though, doesn't it?
And worse, right? It feels, because you don't even have the added space, and you don't have insta warp from one gate to another. So you have to actually run through that space, even though it's very small. So it feels like slow boating towards a gate.
Toward a gate camp. That's terrible.
I know this is an Albion show, but do you remember the 15-kilometer bookmarks that you used to have to make for everything?
That's nasty. That's nasty.
And the fake bookmark lists that got sold. I think I remember someone semi-famous that actually did that.
Oh, anyway, sorry. Back to Albion.
That's crazy. I mean, I think that's a really good kind of tangent we just fell on there, because we talked about tools. We talked about the tools that the tool makers need and how to promote that, and we've identified that that's more than likely going to be a good thing for the development of the game.
Sorry, just briefly, and I'll throw this out there. If my biggest request to the devs right now is giving the third-party devs that are already there a place to chat and hang out. We've set up our own Discord server right now, and there's a bunch of third-party devs there, and we're not being shy about it. We're not keeping it a secret, but it'd be great if there's a section on the forums or the official Discord where third-party devs could hang out.
Awesome. Do you guys have, you guys have your own GitHubs and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own GitHub somewhere, but
nice.
Like specifically, just to hang out and chat and be like, "This is what I'm working on. Does anybody have any experience with this?" That kind of stuff. It makes a big difference.
So how does that? I've actually never been a part of a group like that. I imagine there's just an incredible amount of information sharing, and what kind of experience does a collective experience does a group like that kind of have at its disposal? It sounds really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, so generally there's sort of 3 types of people that do third-party tools. There's the type of people that do it. They'll maybe ask questions and they'll get some information, but then everything they do is secret. It's theirs. They don't share it. They don't really answer questions, and everything is theirs because they want the advantage, or they want their guild to have the advantage, right? Then there's people, and I like to think that I fall more on this, where Everything I do is in the open. All the tools I make are open source on GitHub. Anybody can look at them. Anybody can contribute. Anything I know, I'm more than willing to share in terms of information. And then there's sort of the third kind of people that are sort of in the middle. They maybe make a little tool here with some information. They're not, and they'll answer questions, but they're not really promoting anything, or they don't really do a whole lot. And so the Discord server we have right now is mostly the people that are like, hey, I want to help, and here's my tool. And maybe it's not open source, but they'll answer all the questions. So the community we have right now growing on this Discord server is really good. There's a lot of discussion about like breaking down network packets, and I mean the tool I'm working on, I needed some help with understanding these network packets, and so someone just went and wrote a decompiler for the network packets and was like, here you go, right? So like that's the kind of community that's starting to build up around this. That's open and willing to share a lot of the information, which is super nice.
Nice.
Jeronica, could you comment on how easy is it to actually then convert that into usable front-end tools and things that normal-minded people that do not have a degree in programming can use?
Well, once it's into a database or something like that, then you can kind of transmute it to whatever format you want. Right now, I think everyone's more focused on the data acquisition kind of problems, and I was working on the front end stuff a bit. I had to step away from that a little because of Eve. Kind of pulled me back, but I'll get back on it pretty soon. But
what's the time horizon? When are we going to see stage one of Albion's third-party tools like Eve Markets and Mogul and stuff like that?
And when it comes, as far as I'm concerned, stage one's kind of already there, because we have, like, you can go and look at item databases and maps and stuff, and so I think some of that's already there. In terms of like more real-time information from the game, not this static information, I think the tool we're working on is a big step towards that. Even if people don't use the tool we're building or use the information from it, because we're open sourcing all of it, other people can come along and be like, oh, that's how you did it. Now I can build my own tool that does that, but maybe this other way, or whatever, right? So we're hoping to release our tool in the next couple of weeks. If we do that and everything goes well, I think in the next month or so, you'll start to see some really cool stuff built up around it.
I'm especially interested in things that can be used in a statistical way, and I don't know how much of it is possible or going to be available in scraping or in creating an API, but something like the pricing in towns in the different cities, not just on the market, but also on the services in the actual city. So how the fees are developing and the ownership and the population density and all these things, because one of the things that
that's a good one.
One of the things that I'm really interested in when it comes to Albion is Albion has some of the things that seems to be lacking in Eve. This in Eve, space is fairly flat, right? The resources are pretty much the same almost everywhere, with a few exceptions like Moongoo. But in Albion, you have these biomes, so price development and population composition is going to be very different from zone to zone, and even more so out in the black zones, I imagine, because then it's going to be based on what type of guild or alliance is actually holding that space and things like that. So I think we need to motivate the developers and of course ourselves to try and figure out how to get these statistical pieces of information out there in a way that can be used, right? So we can have something like a consumer price index or whatever for Albion, right?
I mean, most of what you just talked about, once we finish up the current work we're doing on this tool, will be there. The prices and a bunch of that map information. Something I hadn't thought about that you mentioned was just like the population and sending updates and information about the population of zones. That could be really fucking cool.
Yeah, because it's also tied back to when we keep pointing to Eve, like something like Dotland and kill boards and the fact that we get information on how many kills have been in this zone for the last 24 hours or the last hour. This is kind of the information you would want in a game that is so potentially like Eve. So I will know whether I can go into that zone and move my goods in that period of time, right? Is that a time zone where it's safe, or do I need mercenaries to protect me and stuff like that? So definitely something like population numbers in zones would be really nice, and kill mail information.
Yeah, so like the population, of course, unless it's showed in the client, I'm going to assume they only send to the client what the client needs. There's always the potential that they're sending more and they're being bad, but assuming they're being good and they only send to the client what the client needs in terms of information. Things like yellow and red zones and black zones, they only show you the number of PvP flag people. So you can only really track that. But you make a good point. They do have a live updating kill board, and I know people that already use that. They monitor it, and every time a new kill is posted to that or shows up, they grab that and they do modeling based on that. They send alerts to their Discord server that's like, hey, a PvP kill happened in our area that we weren't involved in, or here's all the kills they're having in these different areas, and tracking where the PvP fights can be found, things like that.
Does that diminish the gameplay a little bit though when you get to a point where you're so reliant on tools, but they're really not tools anymore, they are must-haves?
Yeah, so this is one of those really tricky things to do when supporting third-party devs is and I did a GDC presentation a couple years ago, and I talked about this, and Eve struggles with this a bit now because when you put a tool out there, when you make some information available, it's ridiculously hard to take it back. We did that once in Eve where we took out the information about NPC kills in wormholes, and we enraged a portion of the community fairly substantially because this information was there and there were tools built around it. They built their whole play style around it. They basically no longer knew how to play without this. This was how they played. This information was critical to them and their ability to play. So when we took it away, it's like, well, this isn't Eve anymore. This isn't the game we play anymore, right? So there's this risk of things like that happening, and it happens in Eve. Another indication of that is how critical API keys are to getting into a corporation, right? Where you can't get into a corporation unless you give over every piece of information about your character and your accounts. And that's because that information was made available at some point, and somebody decided there was something useful to do with it, and now you can't take that away.
Well, it ties into one of the most amusing things for me to watch with Albion this first week or two has been the Twitch streamers that have been surprised at things like spies and AWOXing and guild theft and all these things. So this is just like version of Eve, right? So things like the keys to make sure that the people that you're recruiting are not going to abuse it, and we still have a fairly simplified or simple role management system in Albion, right? It's not very complicated, and it's easy to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, like one of the things that Eve is moving to, and I do hope Albion doesn't make the same mistake Eve made, is Eve will no longer have API keys in the next year or so. I think it is. I don't know if they have a dev blog on it. But after API keys, the only way to get private character information is by through the SSO, which only gives access to one character at a time, whereas the XML API says, here's all the characters on the account. And I hope Albion follows that. I hope Albion, if they have an API that's private information, they only allow you to get one given character's information, and you don't see what the other characters on the account are. Because the moment you do that, it becomes a requirement, and there's no way to take that back, and there's no way for you, it restricts gameplay, I think, a lot.
Yeah, it's a limiting factor to the meta gameplay, right? To the spy works and stuff like that. You have to jump through so many more hoops than should be necessary, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, even having the bigger API keys, that give you access to all the characters on the account, doesn't remove spying. It raises the barrier a little bit, but it's not that hard to get a new account and, you know, do your spying from there and keep it entirely separate. You can do that. It's just a pain in the ass. It's stupid, and it's not really. It's metagaming at a very high level, and I think, you know, this stuff should happen more in the game.
Yep. All right, so we talked about the tools and where we may be heading to. But another thing I'd like to highlight, kind of put to you guys, this is probably more of my scene, but the player services scene. It's so crazy that people here are so willing to trust groups with with certain assets. So what's my? I'm gonna talk about my background here a little bit. So in Eve, I actually people trusted me with their money, and I doubled their Eskinjita, basically. like
Most people.
Yeah, literally. But here I kind of stumbled upon a player services group that offered protection for farmers in black zones and a lot of ancillary services that kind of fall into that. I'll link their information here real quick.
How does that work?
It's just like it says.
That's kind of one of the things that's very interesting to me as well, being part of the market discussion population in Eve, that things like third partying and like one of the most famous players in Eve Online, second only to the Mitani, is Kribber, and he basically built his entire game on third partying and honorable third partying, and from that developed all the things like markets and loans and all these things. And then you have these third-party escrow services where people trade things like very valuable assets, right? And I'm pretty sure that something like that is going to be needed in Albion too. And I think that's what you're seeing with these kind of services. And it's the same with things like I think the Merc group that you just linked also started looking into things like courier service with general, right?
It's so very natural to have it together.
Things that we know from Eve that didn't used to be a feature way back in the beginning is also being developed in Albion, and I think it's quite fascinating to see how fast it picks up.
Yeah, it. From what I understand, they definitely were not the first to develop the service concept. They actually have several competitors already. But with this particular group, and my guild is part of it. My guild leader actually started it, or kind of as part of like the first group that kind of put it all together. And personally, I'm not actively a part of it. I'm kind of just a very active observer. But I'm very, very excited about where they can go. Because slowly but surely, what I've been noticing too, now they have bounty hunting services that kind of got tagged onto there too. There's actually several bounty hunting services that kind of have been encompassed into the group, which I find incredibly fascinating. Because there's no way we can pull, if only we could pull that off in Eve, but we can't. You know what I mean? Here we can actually do it. We can legit do it. But going back to that one, very slowly, it's becoming not just our Discord. We will actually make a link right here. I can.
I would, while we wait for that, I'd like to ask Fox for a small question, because I don't know if he's got the same impression as I do. Ever since I started playing Eve, I've been puzzled that no one has tried to copy any of the unique selling points of Eve, whether it's the pure PvP, the sandbox economy, the sandbox ecology, the brokerage-based exchange market, all these features that were in Eve since launch day, right? It was even in the beta. So no one has tried to copy it, and this is the first time I've seen anyone coming even close to challenging the unique selling point of Eve.
There was, honestly, it was essentially a direct clone of Eve to start. It was a mech game. Fuck, its name is escaping me right now. But it was an MMO. A lot of the UI was straight from Eve. Actually, like it was an Eve just in mechs instead of space. I think there's been plenty of games that have tried to do maybe parts of what Eve does, but I mean it's hard, and it's not a mass market thing. People a lot of time when people make games, they want to sell it to as many people as possible, and sell it's wrong. They want as many people to play it as possible. I mean, a lot of people that make games do it not for the money. Game devs don't get paid nearly as much as they should. So they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they want people to play it. And so they do things that they're passionate about and that other people are passionate about. And honestly, a lot of people that are passionate about the kind of stuff that Eve has have Eve. And Eve doesn't have an insanely large market because there isn't an insanely large market for it. There's, I think, more games who pull in certain things that Eve has done. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I actually meant it's funny you actually talk about that, Caleb. I actually addressed a little bit of that on my trading show, but yeah, I mean, like maybe I'm the only guy that feels like this. Well, maybe you guys can help me out too. It doesn't feel like coining your term here, Caleb. It doesn't feel like I'm cheating on the old lady, being here in Albion. You know what I mean? Because it's so familiar. It's so close to Eve. It doesn't feel like I'm actually playing a different game. Of course we are, you know, but at the same time, it's like the core concepts and the large ideas are all here.
I think it feels to me a little bit like a light vacation because it still feels so small and less complicated. I could be wrong. Things might develop a lot more in the meta to make it a valid contender to Eve, but I don't see all this politics stuff. I don't see the long-term planning and all these things, and I don't see that it has that scale or capability yet. I could be wrong, but what it does have is it's a huge competitor when it comes to entry-level Eve, right? I think a lot of players that might start playing Eve and might drop it because it's too weird or something might be better off starting out playing something like Albion, and then if they want to upgrade to the crazy stuff, then Eve Online is the next step. So I think it's Eve Lite. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to what there is available for the larger groups to do and own and control and objectives, right? And I mean, keep in mind when Eve launched, it was pretty much the same thing as Albion right now. There was Nullsec and there was nothing out there. There weren't stations to conquer. I believe those came later, if I remember right. I didn't really go to Nullsec at the beginning. Right? Like it was very basic. There were no T2 ships. It was like 7 different ships per race. Like that was it kind of thing, right? Or 9 or whatever it was. And so I think Albion's done it right. And the problem with a lot of games that might want to try and compete with Eve is you can't. Eve has had 15 plus years of development. And it's a monstrosity in terms of what you can do in it. And so launching a game that can compete with that is impossible. You have to launch a game that can, and I'm a big fan of this kind of thing, where you launch a game that can stand on its own 2 feet and that can support its continued development, and then you build it out, and you build something bigger and better, and you keep going, versus the like, well, all or nothing to start kind of approach, and then do nothing after.
It's just, to me, it feels like the first real contender when it comes to sandbox, right? It's the first time I've ever felt that this is an actual sandbox. So I think Eve used to have what I would call a monopoly. It was the only sandbox game around that had proper internal ecosystem and economy and all these things, and where things mattered and had historicity. But this is the first contender I'm seeing, and I'm just thinking, is this going to be a trend? Are we going to see more games like this? You keep calling it niche, but with the platform that they've launched on, with tablets and all that, it might open up the market segment, and people might really like the fact that it's a sandbox that means something when they might be used to the free roaming kind of Grand Theft Auto or things like that, where it doesn't really matter and it doesn't have any historicity or prolonged meaning.
Yeah.
But in this, it does, and it's very much, I think, a small teaser of things to come in game development in general.
Yeah, really hope so. Because it's, not a lot of people get to experience that.
Sure.
Well, because when it comes to things like player retention and what you would in traditional marketing call brand loyalty, well, there's not really been a lot of that in game development, with a few exceptions, right? Basically because of people being used to or having progressed to a certain level in games like World of Warcraft and similar things. But in EVE, the reason that you had this brand loyalty or this extremely strong player retention of the kind that had actually stayed in the game, what is it, more than 6 months, then they stayed for life or something like that, Fox4?
I think it was 3 months or something.
Yeah, it's basically because it's meaningful, right? It is because everything matters in some ways. That means that you're going to be motivated to lock back in, where in other games, you don't have that.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I'd agree. And don't get me wrong, I do hope this game I like it. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, we just gotta, the players they just need to kind of get over or understand better what a sandbox could really do.
Indeed. And I would like to say to any people out there that haven't really played it or have looked at it and said that the graphics suck and it's not good enough, it's borderline better than EVE was when it launched. Just saying.
True. Yeah, because we're still seeing, I'm still hearing about, folks being like really, really upset about losing stuff. Like there's still an idea of loss in the game. That's great. An idea of loss is awesome. That means you cared enough to be upset, Hell, I guess EVE's not even like that anymore, man. It's too easy.
Too much money.
Gate
That's my
camping
problem.
titans.
Yeah, there's so much money in EVE now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, everyone's elite. It's crazy. Yeah, but having seen that, and that's where our bounty hunter people actually have been getting some inquiries because some people get mad and like, hey, I want this dude to not enjoy Albion anymore. Can you make that happen? I was like, what? Yes, that's awesome, man. People are upset. That's great. Emotion is good. You can attach it to a game.
It ties into something that I find really fascinating about what I kind of glanced about the design. There seems to be some sort of, call it wealth redistribution thing running inside Albion. So it will potentially not reach the same extreme difference in class or wealth as you see in EVE. I know that's of course with a few provisos, but I do seem to see a design that makes some sort of trickle down effect work in Albion, something that I do not see in EVE.
Yeah, it's true. See what else is going on here. The prices of those stalls in the cities have been dropping, man. It's crazy.
How do you find the prices for them?
I think you have to see them during the auction time.
Yeah.
But I think people only, the folks who got in there first, they were able to charge a lot of silver for them. But now people just don't like. I have my island now. I don't need this stuff.
Yeah, it was a hype market, right? It was extremely overpriced, and it made no sense. And the same with the percentage fees that people were requesting. It was basically scam-like in nature. But they are settling exactly where you would expect them to settle, where they're sharing the benefit from the bonus of 15% better yields on crafting. So half of that to the owner and half of that to the player. So it's about 6, 7, 8, 9% in price right now.
Yep. All right, Ark has a question here. Our opinion on the black market. I think it's too soon to actually make a really good informed opinion on the black market, because we just barely really got out of the manic stages of the market. But conceptually, I think it's a really good balancing tool for the NPC loot drop tables. As far as acquire as a buyer into the black market, I don't know, man. Some of that stuff seems awfully high priced still.
I think the thing with the black market is that, as you said, conceptually it's such a brilliant idea. I'm mostly worried about the whole silver sinks and faucets aspect of it, and whether that actually balances out. But the way of using that to create the loot tables is amazing, and I think that they should really consider doing something conceptually similar when it comes to raw materials and silver. So they have crafted items and the NPC raw materials like silver and resources in a similar scheme, right? So it gets this whole feedback loop thing.
Do you think? I don't have too much information on this because I was just a victim / user at the time of this. The black market kind of reminds me of how Imperium back in the day, or not Imperium, but how the faction warfare people back in the day manipulated the price of items regionally in order to get really crazy LP payouts. Can we see something similar like that with the black market concept?
I think that's exactly what's happening right now. To be quite honest,
Really?
I've not been able to look under the hood in a meaningful way to figure out if the dependency works the way I think it does. But I'm pretty sure that it's exactly like the abuse in faction warfare. You can see this with some of the strange items that are price manipulated in the normal auction house in Kelion. So if those two things are tied, then that explains why the prices are so high on the black market on some items. And yeah, there's something that's going on that smells of faction warfare abuse.
Using the can the black market system actually regulate that, or is it not able to do that at all?
I think it's going to be self-regulating, to be quite honest, because you cannot corner a market like that forever. You can't just keep throwing silver at it to manipulate the price up. I don't think that that's a viable strategy. So it's something that I would wait at least 2 months before I commented on again, because I don't think it can carry. I don't think it's like an Eve. Everything is fungible. That means that everything can be supplied by everyone. So eventually it's going to be killed, that abuse.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I really should look into it a little more. I haven't really browsed at all into it. But what Ark is saying here, black market had 600% price on Tech 3 bags, on Tier 3 bags. Like, what? Why? Why would you buy that? It's crazy. I mean, if someone were to buy that, how does that affect? It doesn't do anything, right? Because that's the end. That's the end for that item. It's already taken out of the black market.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like with the faction warfare stuff, as an example, CCP came up with it's a very solid way of preventing it. The only problem is it's a manual way. It takes some manual effort. So I'm pretty sure, I would hope, especially since one of the people that helped design that fix is now working there, I would hope that they've covered that.
Are you talking about Monochrome, aka Grayscale?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he helped design that fix.
Yeah, I'm hoping
buddy.
We can get him on the show.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd really like to pick his brain on the design development of Albion, because it smells a lot like improving on things that should have been improved in EVE Online.
Yeah, I mean, it's being part of this soft migration is nice, man. But then we'll see how things pan out. But just going back to the service bit, hopefully that's something we can expand on a lot more. Because I think there's no reason to not at least put some just blind trust into the whole concept. I mean, what do you got to lose? The game, it's early enough in the game where you don't really lose that much, I don't think. Just the fact that people are interested and people are willing to put in the time and effort to make it happen. It's pretty crazy.
Well, we know the segment that Albion seems to cater to. It's similar to the Eve segment, and there's some crazy nerds with way too much brain, way too much time, or stubbornness to spend. So
Yeah, that's true. Looks like we've run out all our items here, unless you guys have any other things you want to explore today.
No, I'm good.
All right, I just want to.
Farming some carrots.
Hey, can you guys speak of the carrot stuff? I'm really out of the loop on that stuff. What's going on with the carrots, guys?
So
crashing.
Yeah, is it? Is it crashing now?
Let me look here. Carrots. They're at 116, so they've been pretty steady. I haven't checked like 2 or 3 days ago, but from a week ago they were around 100, so they're pretty much the same.
It's a little bit puzzling to me that it's not crashing more, because if you consider the fact that players that have not yet skilled up far enough and developed their islands or their farming skills enough, they should be supplying that market with way more than it needs. It's a T1 item. It should be worthless.
I think what's happening is because I'm doing this, I'm basically burning my carrots to improve my cooking. So, because at least during betas, dude, cooking is good, man. Cooking's really good at higher tiers when you can produce like the better goods. So good.
I could have overlooked something. I know that Fox 4 was in the beta. The nutrition level, is that proportionally too high and actually meant to be used as fuel for the stations?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite understand.
Well, the carrots, again, I'm just learning this game from scratch, so I haven't been able to figure everything out yet. But when I'm looking at things like the food and there's these numbers like nutrition level, the nutrition level for carrots seems extremely large compared to other things. So what I'm thinking is that because the carrot thing is meant to be used to fuel other things or as feed for animals, and that's why the demand is already high enough to sustain this high price?
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure.
From a market perspective, yeah, because a lot of the things, like if you like as feed, it doesn't matter what you feed your animals as long as you feed them X units.
Yeah, but when it comes to feeding your stations, right, they need nutrition levels as well, and it looks as if carrots would actually be fairly good.
Mm-hmm.
Or carrots, or is it carrot soup?
Carrot soup, yeah.
6,300 nutrition level or something like that, which is quite high, I think.
Yeah, especially on the carrots thing, I don't know.
But again, it's like all the other markets. They are in land rush mode, and it's just crazy pricing, and you get 2 seeds back for every focus you've invested. So there's going to be a potential overproduction of seeds to feed the market, and it's the same with the books for the journals for the workers and things like that. There's going to be excess, and this excess is going to be fed back into the market, and the prices are going to find themselves to take over from NPCs. It's kind of something that it's similar to Blueprint Originals in Eve, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Where when they've been in the wild long enough, new ones are kind of worthless.
Yeah. All right.
We need
more
Liz
info on that
to talk about this if he ever starts playing Albion.
Yeah.
He's really the expert on blueprints and blueprint contracts and stuff like that.
Shit. I got a quick question from my chat here, guys. I need to focus on learning a craft. What should I get into? Have you guys gotten into the crafting side a lot these days? Personally, I haven't. I've just been doing the reprocessing stuff.
I mean, I've been doing some, but not enough to know which is the best.
I think the reason I have not started playing an alt and focusing on any specific gathering is mostly because the market is so much in flux. So I don't really know where I should focus it. So I've only made a trade alt. And when it comes to gathering, I think every gathering type is valid. It's just a matter of where do you put him initially and where you're going to work out. And are you going to the black zone? And if so, what are the necessities going to be out there and what is already covered? So I don't think any specific gathering is less important than another.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's not like you really do need to specialize because the way the Destiny board and learning points work, it's too difficult to be like a jack of all trades. You really got to be like, I'm going to do this and that's it, or just two things, right?
You can jack of all trades.
It's tough
I
though,
do
man.
think that's a valid strategy because I think you will find that the meta is going to shift a lot. Right now, we've just been rushing, and everyone has just been chasing the tier 6 and tier 7 gear or availability of gathering and stuff like that. But that's equivalent to only fielding Titans in Eve all the time. I don't think that's a valid or viable way of conducting combat, right? If you're doing PvP out in the black zone, you're going to have to figure out fittings that are valid and that you can sustain. You can't sustain everyone just face rolling and losing tier 6 item all the time. That wouldn't make sense to me. And I seem to be able to see that most PvPers are toning it down a bit.
My counter to that, Caleb, is that same Merc group has already developed an SRP plan.
Yeah, but can they sustain an SRP of, say, tier 6 or tier 7 gear? I don't think so.
Not now. Not now. Not yet. Not yet. But I'm just the fact that someone brought it up. Holy shit! You guys are making this like Eve, but I can see my feet. Yep. I just have one shout out for our fellow Albion media folks. This is from Albion Informer website. I think this is their latest podcast episode in SoundCloud. I just wanted to share that. They're the only other podcast that I've seen for Albion. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but hopefully there are more that do come out. I think it's a really good subject. It's a really cool game to have a podcast on. So that's So that's Albion Informer's podcast right there. Anybody else have anything they want to go over today? It's shout out time. All right, I think it is, man. Well, thank you very much, guys, for being here. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully, we can do this again. We'll see when we'll do it. We were shooting for a 2-week cadence.
News, right?
Yeah, if there's something that we can talk about that can fill the time, why not? Why not do once a week? But still shooting for every 2 weeks. Let's go ahead and do our shout outs. Let's start with you, Fox4, if you have any.
I'm too heads deep in this stuff to really have many, if any at all. No, sorry.
All right. How about you, Jeronica?
I'm about the same. I haven't been playing Albion that much yet, so I'll need to expand my circle of friends a bit, I guess.
And Caleb?
I just have a little bit of a tip of a hat to the developers because I've been very impressed in their communications with the player community in their Discord. It's very inspiring to see this direct connect with the player base and the CEO himself actually talking with the players directly, and the community manager being very proactive in there. It's just very impressive, and I really enjoy that. I know that might not be sustainable in the future, but I really like seeing that.
Awesome. And my shout out goes to actually a few people today. Bersilak, thank you very much for getting in contact or giving players an opportunity to contact you directly about their projects. That's really, really awesome. Also to Evoke, she's involved with the Twitch channel and allowing us to get hosted. Really, really appreciate it. And my work group folks, if you have any questions about the services that they offer, and it ranges from protection to courier to bounty services, and we're also trying to figure out an intelligent way to implement insurance into our operations. So it's a little bit of everything. It seems like it's really, really big ideas, but there's some really smart people in that group, like really, really smart people in that group. So hopefully we'll see you guys there as well. And yeah, that's really all I got. Thank you all for being here. And as per usual, with any of the stuff that I make, it'll make it to my YouTube channel same day. At least I'll try to. Awesome. I think that's all I got.
Thanks for having me on.
That's a wrap.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. And everything will be archived appropriately shortly.
Cool. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Cut the stream.